This is Mandatory Listening. I'm your host, Kent Mann. Each week, we sit down over a cup of coffee and discuss interesting topics in the world of the customer experience. Welcome back to Mandatory Listening. Dan and Kent in the recording studio in Asheville, North Carolina. How are you, Dan?
Great. 1/2 cup in, my cup of coffee. So
One half. I'm one and a half right now.
yeah. Well, either way, it's a Friday morning, and I'm feeling good.
Yep. Well, on the other line here, we've got a special guest for you. Ian Hughes, founder and managing director of Vielo Sports, all the way in Newcastle, England. How are you, Ian?
Oh, we're good, thank you. It's kind of afternoon here. Temperatures around about 10, 11 degrees, just coming into spring. So, yeah, no, we're all good.
Do you want to just go grab a coffee really quick to make it feel like it's the morning again?
It's happy hour for you over there.
Yeah, we may have to put some in our coffee or something like that, just to get
somewhere in the world. Somewhere in the world, it's 6 o'clock, ready for a beer.
Yeah, that's right. Well, just to get us started here, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you're doing right now.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my background's quite an interesting one. It goes back quite a few years in the bicycle trade. I'm 66 this year. So I've got around about 35 years experience in the bicycle trade, which started back in the mid-80s, really, with Marin mountain bikes. I did a lot of windsurfing, and the company who I did some windsurfing with saw mountain biking was going to become pretty popular. So they picked up Marin mountain bikes as a UK distributor, brought me on board as a sales rep for the north of England. So I kind of earned my turns understanding how to position a brand like Marin into the market, the cycling market. So we came from a slightly different area of sales, marketing, and distribution outside of the traditional cycle trade. So that was a really interesting curve for 9 years, working as an independent sales agent and seeing how the brand was built and how we progressed with that. So that kind of brought things forward to about 1994. From there, I was kind of looking at other brands that weren't distributed in the UK with a view of picking that up and maybe becoming a distributor myself. So the brand Scott was quite attractive. They didn't have very much distribution in the UK. The headquarters still are in Freiburg in Switzerland. And they were more interested in having a wholly owned subsidiary in the UK. So we started conversations, and in March 95, I set up the wholly owned subsidiary, UK subsidiary, here in the Northeast with a clean sheet of paper, empty warehouse, one telephone line, my plastic garden furniture in the warehouse, and started trading. So we started recruiting, bringing people on board, and I spent 15 years with Scott. So we distributed to about 220 independent bicycle shops around the country. Everything from small independents to the kind of Evans of the world, kept a level playing field. And I guess our competitors at the time were probably Specialized, Trek, and then we were in about position 3. So that was a really, really interesting time, understanding, again, the market, positioning the Scott brand, working for a Swiss-owned company, that we had to produce our own figures in terms of plan for the year in a lot of detail, and then reported to that on live SAP platform. So my higher authority could see exactly how we were performing as a subsidiary live online. So from a discipline in terms of running a business, it was a very good exercise. We also brought the winter sport program into the UK as well. So we looked after skis, poles, and kind of touched the outdoor side. So I ran that up till about 2010, and then realized that the corporate market was becoming more and more push, and thought, I see an opportunity more at the high-end sector. I thought it was a bit more robust and sustainable. So I came away from Scott, set up an independent distribution company with Trevor, my son, in 2010, 2011. We brought a German brand to the market, positioned that, grew that very strongly over 3-4 years. We also brought lightweight wheels into the UK as a distributor. And then we kind of moved away from the German brand and had an opportunity to do something for ourselves. So we decided to use all of that experience in launching our brand called Vielo. And we started off, first of all, with a Road Plus all-road gravel style bike. Launched that January 2018 into the market. It went down extremely well. And here we are, a couple of years in. Second model is a new road bike, R plus one, kind of what is totally one by setup. And I suppose if we had to describe ourselves, it's probably indie boutique style of brand for the kind of discerning customer. We went out to Sea Otter last April. It's literally this time last year. I was traveling out to San Francisco to meet some dealers and get ready for Sea Otter in Monterey. We launched the brand there, got a really good understanding, or a pretty good understanding, I think, of US consumer market, trade market, etc. And then that gave us some ideas and focus how to approach that market. So that's, in a nutshell, roughly who we are and what we're all about. Two of us, myself and my son
Awesome.
Trevor.
Thanks for that introduction. That's quite a long journey you've had. Yeah. When you were first starting out, well, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Newcastle?
No, I lived down south. My parents lived in Kent. Then we moved to Norfolk. When I left school, I started up an apprenticeship with a local car garage and did a City and Guilds motor vehicle technician course. So I've kind of got some mechanical engineering background. And then I moved to the Northeast DJing and worked on commercial radio for a number of years. So that was an interesting arena in terms of it helped me understand probably communicating with people and marketing. So although it was quite a varied career, I kind of picked up lots of little points on the way to get where we are.
So Ian, you're doing well in England, and you brought your bikes over to Sea Otter last year in 2019. So what was the response? How did the U.S. side market respond to your product?
Without kind of getting too giddy and dizzy about it, we kind of set an idea of what we thought the reaction might be. Again, working back in the Scott days, I used to work alongside Scott Montgomery, who did the same sort of job as I did in the US. And we were always kind of comparing notes about British European brands and how they were accepted in the US market. I think a lot of US consumers were looking to the UK and Europe to kind of follow trends and that kind of thing. So I thought, okay, this will be interesting to see what sort of reaction we get back. And I have to say, from cycling fans that we saw, they were kind of blown away by the simplicity of the way we present the brand. It's not complicated. It's not over logoed. It's well engineered, lots and lots of detail. And I think cycling fans got to see that straight away. And then when we got involved with the conversation about the brand and what the product is, they thought, wow, this is really cool. It also gave us an opportunity to talk with some of the trade as well, just to understand how the cycle trade was working at that time. And then journalists as well. We had a lot of journalists that were coming to see us and talk about the brand. And I guess one that sticks in my mind really strongly is Zap Espinosa from Road Bike Mountain Bike Action, who I'd never met before. And he came over as a recommendation, saw the bikes, really liked them, came back with his videographer, and we got into a really good conversation with him. And I think about a month after we finished, he posted on Road Bike Mountain Bike Action of the myriad of bikes and brands that were at Sea Otter last year. There were two models that stood out head and shoulders amongst the crowd, and they were both on the Vielo stand. So that kind of said to us, okay, this is interesting. Again, without getting too giddy about it, that was an interesting mark. So we just need to capitalize on that and see that through.
So when you think about your start in this industry as running your own distribution and manufacturing, which part of this is your baby? Did you start on the luxury boutique side and you just have a passion for that product and you saw the gap there of where you think Vielo would have fit, or are you just, the engineering, what part of this is really the part that you own and you're really passionate about?
I think, Kent, the answer to that is sort of understanding the market where I'd like our brand to be or where I'd like to position our business. Unless you're in that kind of middle market, I call it the bun fight brands. And again, I'm not being disrespectful, but there's so much competition, that middle sector, when you're looking at
Right.
Specialized Trek, Cannondale, other brands that are coming in trying to grab some of that market. And it becomes so competitive. And unless you've got a considerable amount of clout to get in that market, that's a tough one. But I kind of saw that higher end sector, the more discerning customer that were purchasing maybe Colnago, a Pinarello, custom bike, custom build, that wanted some really good personal service. And that's where I wanted to position Vielo. And I think we can do that. In fact, I know we can do it, judging by the customers and the cycling fans and our customers that are purchasing our bikes and how much they love the brand and how much they get involved with it as well. Engineering wise, a very good friend of mine who lives in Germany, he's a doctor of science and engineering at Chemnitz University. So he helps us in terms of all the deep engineering. So I'll come up with some ideas. He'll come up with some crazy technical stuff, completely bamboozle me with all the science and technology behind it, as though he's lecturing one of his students. And I have to say, look, yeah, just come back a little bit to help me understand this a bit better. But also, in terms of detail, then we're both into a huge amount of detail. Just small detail that the customer might not see to begin with until they own the bike for a while, and then they kind of get it. Marketing, again, I got a very good friend of mine who I've known for many years back in the nightclubbing days. He's helped us with the kind of brand communication, and we want to bring our brand in a really honest and open way. So there's not lots of technical marketing behind it. It's just a very clean and honest communication with our customers. I think they appreciate that, and that they respond to that very well.
Very nice. Ken, on a side note, I want to make sure to find a way to use the word bamboozled sometime today in regular conversation. So, Ian, we have a lot of cyclists as listeners. Where would a U.S. cyclist curious about your brand? Where could we find some information? Are you online where we can look you up, or is there some articles? How would we learn more about the product?
Yeah, I mean, if you Google Vielo, Vielo, our website is vielo.cc. There's a number of reviews. There's some YouTube reviews as well out there that kind of will give cycling fans a chance to kind of jump in and understand a bit more about what we do. So yeah, we've got a fairly basic platform for website. We know the next phase is to make that a lot smarter in terms of how we can help customers make a purchase and how we can get involved with them a lot more. So we've got the wireframe of the website in place, but it's a building exercise to make that better and stronger.
So what kind of riding are you doing these days now that you own a bike brand? You do mountain biking, road biking? How do you do it?
To be honest, I haven't touched the mountain bike for quite a while. It's probably been more road bike and certainly gravel. It means that we can get away, or I can get away from the traffic. For sure, there's lots of trails and paths that you can get away from traffic and spin your legs and get some good miles on your bike. Not only physically, but I think the whole mental health side of cycling is such a cleansing and great opportunity. I mean, people talk about how it helps on mental health, but I think it's a massive, big area for people, especially at the moment. What's going on, to help kind of clear your mind and clear your head, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of what's going on, we've done our best to not talk about a worldwide pandemic in every single podcast, but I know we're all curious about what's happening in Britain. What's life like over there for you? Tell us what the situation is in your part of the world.
Yeah, I think it was just about 2 weeks ago. Then we really got the government's Prime Minister obviously made the announcements of how they're going to tackle the situation. So it's not a complete lockdown in terms of like what's happening in Spain or Italy, bless them. So there is some movement going on. For sure, you're allowed to get out and do some exercise. You're allowed to go to the shops and purchasing your food. Government are just asking for any unnecessary journeys not to happen. If you can work from home, do that. If you are working, just make sure that it's only essential work. So day by day, UK government are kind of putting out new releases on how it's affecting UK citizens. And I think the main goal is really just to contain and isolate any contact to stop any further spread and then get on top of it before we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. So I think we're probably about a couple of weeks behind Italy and Spain in terms of the virus still growing. But trading-wise, cyclists, yeah, okay. So we see quite a few cycle shops still offering their services to customers who want to get out on their bike. From our side, then yes, we've got some customers that are still purchasing bikes from us. So there's a little bit of business that's there, but we've got to be very, very mindful of short-term, long-term, how we can get out the back of this. It's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, a lot of people we've been talking to, retailers, we've talked about this in a previous podcast, just saying how this, like you said earlier, just the mental health side of this has been crucial for so many people rushing to bike stores to just find some way to exercise. Gyms closed down, commercial gyms closed down pretty quickly. And I know for myself, I've been running and I was on my road bike this week more than I've been in probably 2 years. So I think that there's a lot of momentum towards, like in the US, it's been, bike shops are deemed an essential business in some places, and I'm sure they have some sort of status there in England as well, just because, I mean, even for commuting's sake, like public transportation is just a nightmare right now.
Are most of the businesses working from home? Is that a nationwide or a countrywide requirement here in the U.S.? Of course, that's what's happening virtually everywhere, as folks are either sheltered in place or working from home. Is that the dynamic in Britain as well, outside of essential businesses?
Yeah, pretty much so. Where people can, work from home, then that really is the opportunity. We're on a small business park here. There's probably, I would say, 5-8% of businesses that are still, you see some cars parked outside and people are working from the office. Not as many. So I think there's some, key personnel that need to be in the office just to help it work. The rest are working from home. We see a whole lot more conversations and interaction via Skype, via Zoom, where people are making that communication and being able to work from home. Some of the bigger companies are having to lay people off or furlough them. But again, there's some government support to help manage that. So yeah, it's kind of an odd one. It's a bit like not a ghost town, but it's just a strange feeling, I think, for everybody and how everyone copes with it. I think it's probably, again, the best way to describe it.
Yeah, with spring hitting early here in the U.S., it's folks are really anxious to get out, and of course, that's when the bike business comes back to life on the U.S. side, and folks are ready to get out. So it's been tough all the way around. Of course, here in the U.S., everyone is taking some strong measures to protect their staff and as well as the customers in terms of interaction with each other and all of the CDC requirements for protections. So I'm certain that's happening over there as well. How's the mood across your community and the folks you deal with? How are people holding up?
I think they're holding up pretty positively. I mean, again, I kind of reach out to quite a few friends in the trade, both distributors and shops, just to get a handle on how everybody is. Some of the smaller independent bike shops are either just running a service facility to help service bikes. Some of the medium-sized shops are still trying to operate some sales and be quite canny. There's another word for you. That's a Geordie word. Quite careful or quite imaginative, probably another way of describing it.
Yeah.
Of how they can make some sales, how they can talk with customers either via Skype or via Zoom, and then if they're making the sale, the customer can then distance themselves when they make the purchase. Yeah, I think the mood generally is pretty positive. it comes through in highs and lows, in waves. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. There's no one day that's the same as the other. I think
Right.
the amount of information that is coming out on the news channels is a lot. And then again, from a personal point of view, it's how much you want to absorb that
Yeah,
before
that's
you
a good
start
point.
going a bit stir crazy about it. So I think it's quite good just to limit some of that, get the essential information for sure, and just try and keep a balance.
Did you have any vacations or out of your house trips that are now canceled or postponed?
Sea otter, I'll bet.
Yeah, well, Sea Otter, obviously, that was one. We were booked to do Sea Otter Europe in Girona, which was at the end of, where are we, end of April, end of May. But that's been postponed as well until September. So any business trips, any events, then yes, we've just put everything on hold. Personal holidays, again, as the business has been growing, we tend to take like a long weekend where we can, myself and my wife, to take just a long weekend rather than a week away. And I guess kind of going back to events and costs for the business, it's just keeping all the unnecessary costs under control. We've
Yep.
got some holiday relief from the government for rates. There's some other holiday reliefs as well, again, to help us keep those costs under control, but also mindful of what we need to do when we do come out of this. We've probably got about a 120-day lead time between pushing the button of having product produced to then having it delivered. So we've got to kind of reverse engineer it and look back and say, okay, if it's clear at the end of this year, when do we need to be starting to invest in new products to have that delivered at that particular time? So that's another kind of dynamic of thinking how we can kind of move forward with the business as well.
Yeah, where do you see the next big move? Are you pushing internally? I mean, of course, no one has all the information, but are you thinking this is a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, 120-day before you're back to normal again, or how do you see this?
I mean, I think there's probably another at least 2 or 3 weeks in the UK before the curve slows down of the virus continuing to grow. I think before that levels off, I think everyone's expecting the next 3 weeks or so. Then it's how can that be completely contained so it doesn't get reinfected again? And then what is the
Yeah, right.
confidence of people kind of getting out and about after that? So I think personally, we've probably got a good 6-9 months yet before there's some kind of normality. What does that normality look like? I think it's going to look completely different to what it
Yeah.
was post the virus being out there. And for me, that's an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of companies, manufacturing in particular, that may have some different regulations. I saw something about tariffs on China this morning or last night. I can't remember. And so the manufacturing, in terms of the labor cost or whatever, might be really impacted here in the next year or so, just because of either politics or just general. I don't want to have another virus come out of China and then my manufacturing is shut down and now all of our products can't be produced. So I've heard just interesting conversations. I don't necessarily have an opinion one way or another, but in the next year or so, we may see a different labor force doing a lot of our manufacturing.
I completely agree. I totally agree. I think we're in a fortunate position being a kind of a small indie boutique brand that we can make informed decisions fairly quickly, and we don't have to scale up to big numbers in production to make the business
Yeah.
plan work. So we're quite agile in how we can steer the business and make those sales in territories that are back to some kind of normality. We're not just focused purely on trying to make sales in the UK. Manufacturing, then yes, I think we've got to be fairly careful how that's done, how that's sourced. another side that I'm really, really interested in is how people are communicating at the moment, and how they may communicate, and how brands can communicate with their customers in the next period when things get back to some kind of normality. I think there's lots of new challenges and lots of new trends on a marketing side that we can learn what we're doing at the moment to how we can really communicate with our customers after this.
Yeah, that's a good segue. I think that there is really a yearning for communication from a brand side, either from retailers or just consumers in general. You know, give us some, support or some tips or some, you name it. I think some communication, and I think in a time like this, very careful and thought out and sensitive communication can really separate two different brands when we come out of this, like you said, with some normalcy, and just having that dialed in communication and whatever the consumer facing language is, I think has to be really thought out and careful, whether it's through reps or through just an Instagram page or through just a Facebook page or a website message. That could really make the difference for a brand in the next few months.
No, I completely agree. Again, and we're fortunate that we're quite small, and our brand communication is to more consumer lead the brand rather than dealer lead the brand. It takes a little bit longer to do that, but again, we're in contact with our customers, our potential customers. And the challenge that I'm fascinated with is how we can make that smarter. How can we make that work even better? And as you say, keep it honest. The last thing you want to do is kind of scare your customers or have that conversation in a kind of an awkward way or an uncomfortable way for them. It's got to be believable. And I think tech is going to be quite a help in how we can do this. I really do.
Yeah. What are your main channels for marketing right now? Are you on Instagram? Are you on Facebook? How would you, or is it mainly your website and email? What is your way of communication right now?
I would kind of break that down into a couple of areas. There's kind of paid for marketing and advertising, and what I would call earned advertising and marketing. So paid for, we would
Yeah.
take some traditional routes of advertising in some magazines, advertising online, advertising via digital magazines, and then also paid for, I would say, is probably shows and events and that kind of thing that we do, going out and meeting and greeting our customers. And then earned marketing, probably reviews from magazines, from journalists, reviews from customers. And then the whole kind of social media. We love our customers to join us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and share their riding, share their thoughts, and share their pictures. And we get quite a lot of feedback from our customers all around the world, not just from the UK, from the US, from Spain, from Denmark, Australia, of customers who have bought our bikes, and they love to share where they've been riding. And we kind of spin that and try and build that community. So at least we can have a conversation with them once they're an owner, and we can treat them as part of the family and they're part of our tribe.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we do our communication and marketing.
As a company culture, I mean, is it a traditional rep system for Vielo where you have a few in-house rep teams and you're just going across different channels selling to different dealers? How do you manage that?
No, I mean, we don't have any reps, or it's basically myself and Trevor. It's the two of us.
Yeah.
So customers can email us directly weekends and
Yeah.
nighttime. We switch the phones through to our personal phones. So if somebody rings the office at the weekend, they're quite surprised they actually get through to us, and they're starting a conversation direct with the people who own the business.
Wow.
So that goes down quite well. I suppose the other communication is through our appointed dealers. We've got about, 12 appointed dealers in the UK. And we really want to make sure that those dealers understand our brand, understand our communication, and have as much passion about the brand as we do. Because, again, I know from experience, more often than not, you'll get a customer that's learned about a particular brand. They go into the local bike shop and they ask about that particular brand, and they'll meet maybe one of the sales staff in the shop who's just been given a sales meeting that the shop needs to clear this stock of X. So there's a bonus on that particular product. And then the customer, instead of getting the brand that he's walked into to purchase, walks out with something else that the shop has sold them. That can be a little bit disappointing for our brand, for us. I know it goes on, and at the end of the day, the shop has got to look after itself. But it's always a point where you could lose the dilution of your brand if you've spent all that time communicating to that customer and they've been switched onto something else. So we try and avoid that as much as possible by appointing shops that we know and have that passion, and we'll see that through, of taking the customer through the journey of Vielo and making the purchase. It's not
Yeah.
foolproof.
When you say, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going to say the system's not foolproof, but I think if you spend time appointing the right dealer in the first place, then you stand a good chance. And again, it's similar to when we come to the US. We don't want to necessarily get into a system where we're working with big distributors, so it then goes through a third party. We'd rather sell direct to shops that, again, can understand our brand, understand who we are, what we're about. We'll spend a huge amount of time training the staff, letting them know, and making it easy for them, easy for the sales staff and the owner of the shop, enjoy the journey of selling a Vielo to a customer.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you had 12 distributors or certified distributors in the UK, and it's just you and Trevor doing that training and traveling to make sure that they are a internally vetted distributor that goes through your qualification of training and knows the brand, knows your story, knows why you're placed in the market. So for you and Trevor, what is the internal tipping point that says, okay, now I do need to hire people to just take off some of this load? Is it 20 distributors? Is it 50 distributors? Have you set that kind of number for yourself?
I mean, we've got a 5-year plan for sure. That's in process. Okay, it's just been put a little bit on the back burner in the current situation.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I think probably staffing wise, we need to be face to face with dealers, with customers as much as we can. And it's the kind of the back office stuff, the administration, looking after bookkeeping, taking deliveries, those kind of things at the moment, which we would need some support with, which allows us then, Trevor and myself, to get out face to face. I think probably in 12 months, then yes, we're going to need some help doing that. How does that look? Again, I think whoever we appoint, whether they're a representative, sales representative, they've got to be they've got to be a mini me or a mini Trevor to carry that through. That's a really important one, and then scale that up.
Yeah, that's a just dynamic, I think, especially in your segment of the market where you have this robust image and this robust vision for what you believe the company is and should be, and the product should be, like you said, down to the very tiniest detail that a customer wouldn't necessarily know until after they bought it or had it for a year. And that balance of, okay, we're growing and we're seeing success and we're seeing momentum, but also, is my image, is my segment being diminished or watered down to an extent? And I think that there's a big compromising point, at least here in the United States, where brands get bigger and bigger and see success, and then their image, which they started with, and the founder's baby, just becomes diluted.
No, I completely agree. I mean, again, you've seen it, guys, and I've certainly seen it over the years, that brands that have come to the market, they've grown incredibly quickly for whatever reason. You think, wow. And then, as you say, they hit a tipping point and then it drops just as quickly. And then you can also identify the brands that have grown steady, build, and they're still there. They're still doing it. They're still knocking it out. And I think that's an important lesson, that when you do build that, is then sustaining that communication, keep repeating it, keep repeating the message, and keeping that brand communication clear. We know that shop staff move on, so we have to continually keep retraining, keep putting that message out, clarifying it, so that it is sustainable. And I genuinely see we've got an opportunity here to make it a long-term sustainable business, that I don't want it to grow too quickly. I don't want the hockey stick curve to grow crazy, crazy fast, and we're just running around like headless chickens trying to keep on top of it.
Yeah.
From a managing point of view, and also from a cash point of view as well. Because if you ramp it up too quickly, we know how much cash that it eats to grow the business so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when times like the virus, and everyone is looking around, asking where's the cash. And, I think that puts a lot of companies in a very vulnerable position. Anyway, it's just an interesting dynamic, and I think you're right in the throes of it, and in a good way. You're able to be agile and be nimble before you have, those larger companies that have that really diluted message and image. They're looking around with $1 billion of overhead, thinking, "Oh no, what happened to our brand?" And anyway, it's just a I guess business strategy, or business. From our perspective, we're all about culture and training and all that stuff. So
It's good to see the passion there on the same side for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, thank you. No, I mean, it's something which you can't. I think you either got it or you haven't. I think you can't kind of tune that into somebody. And I think the shops will get that. The other businesses will get that. Customers certainly get it. They say it, they see it and feel it. And I just want to make sure that we keep that brand communication going on long term into the future. I'm sure, and I think we're all sure, that this virus and this terrible situation that the planet is facing at the moment will get to a point we do get back to some kind of normality. I think that normality is going to be changing a lot, for sure, and it's going to make the healthy brands healthier, and the ones that have been kind of struggling or living on a knife edge, unfortunately, I think we're going to see some drop off there.
For sure.
Well, Ian, we wish you the very best. It's really inspiring to hear about a growing, exciting new brand with a very specific focus, and a founder and a director with such passion and commitment to the brand story and the product as well. So we're going to keep our eyes on you and look forward to seeing and hearing great things. And we absolutely wish you the best, and really appreciate you taking some time out of your happy hour to visit with us this afternoon, morning.
Yeah, and just as a quick final question, have you ever been to Asheville, North Carolina?
I haven't, but I know there's one place I'm going to go and visit. That's for sure.
Awesome.
Soon as time allows, then most definitely. But yeah, I mean, I wish you, your families, and everybody safety, good health, and Godspeed.
Yeah. Thanks, Ian. Well, actually, too, I went to this last year. I went to the UK for the first time in Scotland, and spent some time in Edinburgh. And I've talked about the Asheville beer scene, which is like frothy and thick, and like a milkshake almost. And the UK beer is just light and airy, and like a soda almost. So we'll have to give you a milkshake beer when next time you're here.
Well, that sounds good.
You're here.
We do have Newcastle Brown. That's quite a legendary.
That's right.
Yeah, the dog. You know the story about the dog.
Yeah. Enlighten the listeners.
I don't know the story. No, I love Newcastle though.
Yeah, so Newcastle Brown got a nickname. It was called the dog. So the guy was at home. He's got the dog in the house, and I said, "I'm just going to go and walk the dog." So of course he walks around to the pub, pint of Newcastle Brown. So that's why it's been called the dog. The guy was not just necessarily walking the dog. He was using it as an excuse to go to the pub.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, people are walking the dog a lot recently, I'm sure. The
Yeah.
virus has not been good for the liver. All right, Ian. Well, thanks so much for doing this with us. We appreciate it, and stay healthy out there.
Pleasure. Good talking to you guys. Take care.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you're ready to start influencing real change and growth around you, head to mangroup.net. There's a bunch of free articles and case studies on our blog, as well as links to more information about Man University and our other services. If you really like this episode or have a different perspective and want to start a conversation, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.